Hey, thanks for being here. We are grateful that you decided to join us as Rich and I have conversations about what it means to become ourselves. Enjoy.
So the phrase, it takes a village to raise a child, right? We hear that a lot, and it's helpful and it's true, and I very much believe in it. Um, and I would say that a village or community, right? Community of people, is needed for any person, right? Like, everyone benefits from community, right? There's a difference between loneliness and solitude, right? So when we talk about that phrase, it takes a village to raise a child, I would also say that it takes a village, to care for a person. It takes a village to develop a person. And so what I was thinking was, I think that it feels more palpable to use that for the child, right? A child, a baby, right? That it takes a village to raise one. A village perhaps is more willing to take on a little one, right? Like, just so like ready to absorb like a sponge and grow and explore and learn. Um, is a village as excited or willing to take on a person that has baggage, a mess? Is
By baggage, you mean what? What do you mean baggage or a mess?
Yeah, like just
My goodness.
yeah, just struggles, pain, hurt, things that you haven't healed from, like just baggage that you have brought with you and maybe carried with you your whole life.
So, we're we're kind of coming into this conversation talking about our kids, but what I hear you kind of like going into is more like just anybody, like not just a baby, not just a toddler, not just a teen, but
I think about the people that are around us now,
yeah.
the our chosen family, so to speak. And I would trust any one of them to raise our kids. I and it is because of the investment and like the love that they have poured over time, right? That I feel like
Well, maybe
I lost it.
no, it's fine. Maybe let's pull that string a little bit, because even as you said it, I'm like, okay, what makes every one of them that trustworthy? What is it about our friend group that we consider family, or to use your language, right, chosen family, that makes you so willing to say, yeah, raise my kid, I trust you? Like, what? Because look, we're coming into this conversation prompted by the idea that the real value, right, that phrase, it takes a village to raise a child. The real value, and I almost feel like there's more to that phrase. Do we know what the rest of that quote is? It's one of those quotes that are
I
like
don't know that there was a
long
rest.
accepted. I think I almost feel like all those quotes that are like long culturally accepted, there's like, I've come to find out, oh, there's actually more to that. Like the jack of all trades. The jack of all trades. Oh, he's a jack of all trades. He's a jack of all trades. And I learned not too long ago that there's more to that quote. I don't know the
I didn't know it was a
fullness.
quote. I thought it was just like a name.
Well, he's a jack of all trades is the phrase that people use, but it comes from a quote. I don't know from who. I don't know what time period in human history.
Okay.
and I don't even know the exact verbiage of the full quote, but the idea of the full quote, as I remember it, is this person is a jack of all trades, but a master of none. So the way the original quote was, the context of it is not speaking very highly, I think, of a person that is a jack of all trades.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I wonder if the village one also had some secret context I didn't know about. But whatever. We're coming into this conversation prompted by this big culturally accepted idea that it takes a village to raise a child, which I think is really true for many reasons. I think we saw it growing up in our environments. I mean, it was our tias and our tios and our abuelitas that in large part raised us outside of our parents. But what we're trying to like talk about here is the real value of the village in raising your child is that you as the parent don't need to be everything for your child. But that's also the challenge. The real value is that when you have a village to help you raise your child, you don't need to be everything, but that's also the challenge. And the reason why I say it's a challenge is because I'll speak for myself. I think sometimes you do want to be everything to your child, because when you're everything for your child, there's a dependence there that you kind of want, and I wonder that there's unhealth in that for sure, right? There's unhealth in wanting your child to see you as their everything, that they go to you for everything, that they need you for everything.
It sounds exhausting.
It sounds exhausting, but it becomes really problematic as the kids get older and start to think about life outside of your home, which is kind of the phase that we're entering in with a rising junior. All that to say, I'm hearing you say like, yo, this is true of anyone. Like community and village, the village concept is true for anyone at any stage. You need a village. And you're saying in our friend group, our chosen family, every single one of them we would trust in raising our kids. And I'm saying, what is it about the character of our friend, the character traits of our friend group that you would say, I trust it? What is it that you see that you're like, yeah, I take my child and raise them, right? Kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, I'm approaching it just from a couple of things, right? Like there's history, there's history there.
Relational history you're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's relational history. They have seen our kids grow up, and they have been with them throughout the years, through the many phases of their short lives up until this point. But they love them deeply. Like they love them and are committed to them, but they also show genuine interest in them as individuals. So they are not their friends' kids. Like they are Josiah and they are Hayden, and they take time to know who they are and like what their interests are, what they're doing next. Oh my gosh, new haircut, or all of those things. Like they just take like
Como?
It's deep, and yet it's not that deep, but it's deep. As far as like, we're just talking about presence, consistency, commitment. These people not only show commitment to us, but they show commitment to them, and how like they engage with them, ask them about themselves, care for them, just like little details. So that's just kind of like an initial what I mean about that.
What yeah like I think about the 5 couples within our closest circle of friends. I mean, we have a lot of friends that also care about our children. But within the 5 families that we spend the most time with, I think about how all of those families have had. I was talking to Josiah about this actually a few days ago, and how he was able to name really special moments that he's had with each of
Those people.
of those people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he said, you know, with Blanca, it was the moment at the premiere. With Justin, it was also a moment at the movie premiere, and how he spoke to him almost like an uncle, like a proud uncle would. Jose, in a particular conversation about a girl that he was dating, Andy, and several moments of him feeling like he was hanging out with another teenager, which is, I think, funny. Christina helping him learn how to drive. Like, with each of them,
Mm-hmm.
all these little moments. Oh, with Dell at the... This is funny. But with Dell at the bar for Taina's wedding.
Mm-hmm.
For the record, it was a bar restaurant. They were on the restaurant side of things, I think. And I'm listening to what you're saying. I'm like, that has been so comforting to know that our friends, care enough for our kids not to go through us.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
mm-hmm.
they have their own relationship with them that they don't need to get to them through us. They can text them directly. They can come and specifically say, I came here to hang out with your children, you know, and that was really comforting, because I think there was a season, especially when we were in positions of leadership very early on, when our kids were young toddlers or older toddlers, where we saw that people, I don't know, didn't consider that, right? Like, that we had children, and that, I think you've comically said this in the past, like, we've been invited to places when our kids were younger, get invited to places, and when we were invited, the people didn't think that we would come with our kids.
Mm-hmm.
And you would comically ask, like, but we have kids, where would we leave our kids if we
Yeah.
didn't bring them with us? Like, what do you think was important for us to think about as we thought about our kids? Like, and by say think, like, what kind of boundaries, what kind of things did we have to process to put in place as it related to our kids feeling like they weren't an extension of their parents in a kind of dehumanizing way, like that they are their own people, as they got older? Like, how were we, what did we need to think about?
Well, initially what comes to mind, I mean, there's a lot of like background and pre-work that happens before you can even get there. So what I mean by that is what we are cultivating at home to show them that they are individuals, and they have voices, and they are just not the kids at the house that just follow suit and they're just kids, right? So like, I believe that it is just laying the groundwork of like genuinely showing interest and cultivating a relationship within the home that shows that there's like depth, right? I'm interested in you. You're in, you know, like, you're so interesting. Your life is interesting to me. What's going on with you? Like, what do you like? What don't you like? Or what's new? You know? So I think that there's an element of like groundwork that happens to create a very deep dynamic first in like the unit. The reason I say
The
that,
unit meaning me, you, and the kids.
yeah. And so,
And that groundwork being interest, like we're interested
Yeah.
in each other.
we're
Okay.
interested in each other. We are curious about one another. We want to just continue to learn, and as we grow, learn the new things that we may like or want to do or try, and cheering each other on and all of those things. The reason I say that that's groundwork is because when we invite other people in, to our space, to our life, or when we're entering other people's spaces, we are all showing up. We are arriving like, one, we're talking with our kids in those settings. It's not like, all right, now you go do something else. Like they're very involved.
Go to the room and play, or go
Yeah,
here.
you know, granted, like the ages and the seasons are different, but like, they're in the mix. They're in they're in the conversations. But having done the groundwork of me showing interest in them and all of those things that I just said also makes them want to be a part of those spaces, because people are genuinely interested in them. Like, it also makes them want to be a part of the group that I'm in, because they feel valued and they feel like people are going to be interested in them.
Good.
If you're in a space that no one's showing any interest, you don't want to be there. So it also is a driver for them wanting to like be in that space. Yeah,
I like
forgot,
that. No, that's I really like that, because there's so much about like these conversations that I'm realizing, like, and I think I said this in a previous episode, where we haven't really tried, I don't think we've tried to like codify our parenting, meaning like, okay, we learned this and here's 1, 2, 3 and here are the codes to parenting. I don't think we've really tried to do that. There are things that we learn and we implement, and if they work and if they're healthy, we're like, oh, okay, so this is probably the way that we should process conflict with our kids, or a kind of loose code, maybe. But as we're having these conversations, I'm like, oh, that's really helpful. And it also helps me to say, that's actually kind of what we do. Or these are the things that we've attempted in the parenting journey as we try to figure things out. And you said something just now that made me feel that way. Like, you're essentially saying any space that we walk into as a family, we're walking into that space with the culture of what we build at home. Right? Am I right in saying that? Like, we get invited to a friend's house. We are part of a small group. We go to a new city. We occupy a foreign space. But what's never foreign are the the rhythms and cultures and values that we build at home. And what you're saying is, it starts with how we treat our kids as the parents. Hey, I'm interested in you. You're an interesting person. I'm so curious about you. I'm learning about you. What was that thing that you mentioned that you said you're really interested in? I want to learn more. Actually, I want to do it with you. Can we do it together? Can you tell me more about it? Hey, who's this friend? That kind of interest and enthusiasm, which we also talked in a previous episode, that kind of interest and enthusiasm from us to the children at every stage of their life, when they're toddlers, when they're older toddlers, when they're preteens, and now that they're teenagers, or at least Josiah is, that kind of interest and enthusiasm at home now becomes the norm. It's like, I'm interesting. I'm someone worth being curious about. And perhaps another byproduct of that is, I am now also interested in people, and I am also curious of my environment. So I'm going to ask questions. I'm going to be present with this friend, with that teacher, with this activity. And so now when we go into a foreign place, let's say a friend's house or another house that has different values, we still operate that way as a unit, as a family, that it's almost inevitable for the people in that space to say, oh, we just we should probably just do what the parents are doing as it relates to the kids.
Yeah.
Which is why our friends are like, oh, the parents are really interested and really curious and really enthusiastic about their own kids. We should be too.
That's it.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah,
there's
that's
this... It's almost like it's almost like being in a group and you're like, you naturally gravitate to the confident person. Not the overly confident or the unhealthily
Obnoxious person.
confident. The what?
Like an obnoxious person.
Oh, yeah, the obnoxious person, but the person that's just confident and kind and compassionate and curious and interested, and then they're also just confident about themselves because maybe they had people invest in that confidence, right? It's almost like walking into the room and feeling like, damn, that person's really confident about themselves. That person's really not like shaken by a foreign environment. Like, they don't, this is like the don't be a thermometer, be a thermostat, kind of thing. Like, you set the temperature of how you want to be treated and how you want to be perceived. Again, not in a controlling or contriving kind of way. Like, hey, this is a impression management. Like, I need to make sure that you see me a certain way because that makes me feel better. But no, I need you to see me the way that I have learned to see myself, that is healthy, and you either adopt to that or you can't really have a relationship with me, because I'm not gonna let you pervert me by virtue of the way that you want to see me. You know what I'm saying? I'm going far, but what I'm trying to say is, like, I love what you're saying, because it gives some language to what I think we've tried to do with our kids through the phases.
Yeah.
And
well, I mean, I feel like you said it way better than what I was like processing in my head.
I mean,
I
I'm
also
just
think
working
that
off your raw material.
I think the unique dynamic is that, we're Josiah and Hayden are kind of like the first ones to go through this sequence, right? Like, they're the older ones out of a lot of people that we know.
A lot of friend group circles.
Yeah. So doing this thing, like parenting in this way, has felt very exploratory. I would say very fulfilling, and I mean, there's so many words that I could say, right? Like, exploratory and fulfilling and really challenging, because you're also having to figure this out in real time. For instance, I knew I would have to like parent through a breakup or like heartache. I just didn't think it was going to happen. I thought maybe.
Wait, what do you mean? What are you talking about? What breakup, what heartache did you have to parent through? We broke up? What are you talking about?
Parents. I'm talking about parenting.
Oh
my
my
gosh,
goodness.
where are
Like
you?
our kid going through a breakup.
Yes, that's why parenting.
Yes. My bad.
So,
Oh my gosh. Okay, yes. That's...
So, I mentioned that because I'm talking about, like, having to... Our kids are the oldest ones, and having to go through a lot of these things just in real time and first, and just as an example, right? Like, I knew that we would have to parent through a breakup at some point. I didn't think it was going to be this, like, soon in the syllabus. We didn't even get a syllabus. So, like, the idea of really just trying to build these really solid and imperfect relationships, they're not perfect by any means, has been really, like, rewarding and fulfilling, so that when we enter other spaces with, like, our friends and family, and they could somehow pull from that. You know, like, they're a part of this. Like, it's almost like you're a part of this now. Like, you're in this.
Grab a syllabus. Sit down.
So no, listen, we don't.
No,
we're
not
in this
grab a
class and there's
syllabus.
nothing.
Yeah.
So it's very comforting. because
To have
I
the
don't
village, you're saying.
to have the village. Yeah, all that to
Yeah.
say, bringing it back, it's very comforting to have a village, because I don't think I honestly have, and you can definitely tell me I'm wrong, but I don't think I've honestly ever felt like I needed to be everything. I don't think I felt that.
I was just gonna ask. I'm like, am I the only one here that feels like he wanted to be everything to
In
our
this
kids?
room, maybe. You know why? Because I think
Okay.
starting all the way from like carrying a child to bearing a child to the whole like newborn where you literally are everything, I've been there, and it's exhausting. Like I've
Wow,
been there.
That's actually really.
You know what I mean? I've been there to a certain extent where I am literally
Yeah.
everything to you, and that's not a burden I'm willing to bear, nor a badge I'm like, trying to flash, right? Like, I'm tired. I think about it and I'm exhausted. So now when there's just so much more to be everything, I'm good. So I think it's just you.
So it is just me, apparently. So you wouldn't feel a way. This happens a handful of times, right? Where I tell Josiah something. I think I knocked it out the park. I'm like, damn, that was a lot of good wisdom I just gave this kid.
Mm-hmm.
And he just walks away like, thank you, Papi. You know,
Everything I need to hear.
everything I needed to hear.
Uh-huh.
Nothing happens. Nothing changes really. It was like the wisdom wasn't really. It didn't really have an impact on him.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe a week later or 2 weeks later, he talks to one of these guys
Mm-hmm.
within our friend circle. They say kind of the same thing that I say, and he comes back and he was like, yo, that was really, really helpful. And some change comes from it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, yo, I said the same thing to you, bro. It's comical, but I think a small part of me is like, am I becoming obsolete to this kid? You know, like, and it's a ridiculous thought. I'm
Okay,
being
good.
very dramatic.
Yes, you are.
But I think that's why the second part of that prompt to me is, I guess it's relevant just for me in this conversation. Like the real value of a village is that you don't have to be everything for your child.
Mm-hmm.
But that's also the challenge, that you don't get to be everything for your child, because in some weird I need to see my therapist kind of way, kind of like I want them to need me. I want them to like won't be everything. I don't know. I guess for the fear that I will be irrelevant. Yeah, forgotten or irrelevant to them, like. That the fear that I'll be forgotten and that I'll be irrelevant, that they won't need me, they won't come to me. It's nice to be needed. It's nice to be admired.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess the fear of that, of not having that, I guess.
Yeah.
Even with my children, I think in general, I'm an Enneagram 4, so I think I've said this before, like I'm always working through like my fear of being forgotten in some ways, and maybe this is how it's showing up in my parenting.
Maybe.
Maybe, I don't know.
But I
Make a note for my therapist.
I think
You're good with it though.
everything, yeah, like I'm good with it in that from, say, that same situation from my vantage point, right? Like, you just offered some really great wisdom and advice, counsel, whatever the case is. I'm like, yeah, he's got it. He's a smart man right there, very wise. Good thing he was there to take that one on. So, yeah, I don't necessarily feel, and I'll give you a very real example. I remember a couple months ago when you were gone for that tour, and it was like you were gone every single weekend, Thursday to Sunday, back to back to back to back. That first weekend that you were gone, I meal planned. Everything was like running like clockwork. We were getting up early and like not feeling tired. Like kids were going, like everything was happening great. And I remember coming off of that weekend, I was like, we're good. The kids are older. Like they were helping with dinner. Like we got this. We got it. It's fine. It's good. We're gonna be fine. That second weekend came, and I realized, like, if I want to continue what we've cultivated and be like a present, good parent that like we've tried to be,
Yeah.
like, I really got to be on and present because it's just me now.
Right.
I'm by myself, navigating like the emotions of like schoolwork and relationships and like whatever was happening that week. Like, I not only have to be like present for just the regular things, but now it's just like, oh my gosh, there's no one that I can tag in right now.
No.
By that second week, I was exhausted. I was so tired because again, it could be very easy to be like, all right, guys, I'm going to leave you in the living room on the couch watching TV and I'm just going to go watch a show. I could have done that. And sometimes I did do that to the point that I was just like, okay, this is too much. Like, I can't leave them on their own too much. So, all that to say, right? Like, I can't be everything to them. They shouldn't expect that from either one of us. For obviously a myriad of reasons. It's unhealthy. For everybody.
Yeah.
But also, like, that would create really unhealthy dynamics into adulthood.
Well, can we talk about that a little bit? Like, we have a 15-year-old. Sophomore in high school, just told me today, I don't know if he told you this, they're getting ready to plan for their junior year. So he had a meeting about scheduling classes and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Junior year, we know how important that year is for college. College conversations are happening, not at full blast, but they're happening, right? So we're being confronted often with the idea of the next phase for at least one of our kids. So we don't have a full scope of what this approach to parenting will ultimately do. Mm-hmm. You know, what kind of benefits. But as far as we have been able to observe, what do you think are some of the benefits and maybe some of the challenges to parenting this way, to really invest in not just our children, but in the village that surrounds them? What kind of human will they become when they transition into the next phase, where there isn't as much oversight of their lives because they're living slightly more independent lives? Mm-hmm. Like, what are some of the benefits that are important for us to be aware of now? You know, I imagine we also have a lot of friends that have young children, or friends that have slightly younger children that are probably wanting to think about this phase that we are in. So, like, as we consider some of those friends, as we consider some of the people that may be listening to this, like, what are some of the benefits of approaching the development and the nurturing of our children at this phase this way?
I'd like to think that we are raising pretty open people.
Can you say more about that?
Yeah. Open to experiences, open to ideas, open to others. Just open to people. Like, you know, the desire, like, the more the merrier. In one's own life, like in their own life. So
the more the merrier, the more relationships, you're saying?
Yeah.
More people.
Yeah, just like, yeah.
Is there any way to, like, balance that with, like, the idea that you don't spread yourself too thin? Or
oh, for sure. Yeah. For sure. This isn't like this isn't open and it's like a like an unlimited. It's not like unlimited, but I say the benefit is that it's just creating people that are open-minded, right? Because even within, this small group, there's diversity in some cases, right?
Yeah.
Like diversity in experiences.
Experience, yeah.
Yeah, just lots of different things. And so I think that the beauty is that they can have different experiences with each of those people. So
Openness.
yeah, so openness, I think that maybe just like a challenge could be like I don't know, putting a lot of pressure on those types of like on having relationships like that, and like being so quick to like find your people and they be your everything so soon. Like Josiah and Hayden grew up in this, like this
Oh,
this
yeah, I see.
depth and like this beautiful thing that
You're saying it takes time.
it takes time.
Yeah.
And I think that because this is pretty much all that they've ever known, they have such a luxury in having like such depth, like them just enter into such beautiful depth where they may just want to rush depth. Like, I want us to be the bestest of friends, like after week 1, because they may idealize relationship in such a way that that's just like, if we're going to commit to be friends, and we're deep friends, because that's all that I know. Like my parents and I, like we've just cultivated such deep friendships. And so that's all I know. And it's like, well, it takes time. It really, like for us, it's definitely taken some time.
I can definitely see that being a challenge for the kids as they move on, like wanting the product or the outcome of the work that took, what will have taken about a decade and a half of their lives. They'll want that closeness. I can see that being a challenge, being overly trusting.
Yeah.
Overly trusting, because trust, they'll think that the trust that they have with newer relationship, it will be like the trust that they have with us or the village that helped to raise them, not knowing that the trust that existed with us as the parents and the village that raised them was the result of a decade and a half of nurturing. That may not be the case with what could be a very trusting relationship, but doesn't have the depth with someone new that they meet along the way. I could definitely see that being a challenge for them. And I could probably also see that being a challenge for a family with younger children trying to foster that. Like,
Yeah.
in other words, like wanting to have that village if it doesn't exist now, wanting to have a sturdier village for the sake of their kids, and potentially rushing relationships just so that they can have that, or say that they have that village, but potentially not realizing that what we're talking about here, the cultivating of family rhythms, having others be a part of that, to so much so that they can speak into the lives of our children. What we're really talking about is trust building. Like, no one is in this village. The reason why you're able to say, I trust every single one to raise our kids, is keyword trust. There's already trust built, something that's been in the works for a decade in some cases. I think acknowledging that takes time to build is going to be key on how you kind of build your village. Also, to your point, like I don't know exactly what this will all produce. I think I have some ideas of what it will produce. Kind of like, what will our kids end up being like? I ultimately don't know.
But we have some idea.
But we have some idea in the way that they act now.
For sure.
Right?
And that's
a gift. And that probably that should be said. Like, we're not like blindly, navigating this parenting journey. I think there are going to be moments, as we've already experienced and as other parents have experienced that don't have teenagers, that their kids will make decisions, behave in certain ways, be in certain relationships that will kind of show you like, oh, this is kind of the way that you will live as you grow. This is just a seed version of how you will exist as you're older. Certainly some things change, other things evolve, but you kind of have a sense along the way. You're not totally blind. And so I say, I don't know ultimately what Josiah and Hayden will look like behaviorally when they're older, but I do get the sense that they will be emotionally agile people, because one of the benefits of the village is a diversity of experience. I said this the other night after a really, really good conversation with Josiah. We went to go eat tacos, and he shared something really intimate that I think he felt kind of not uncomfortable, but he felt very vulnerable in sharing. And we've had several conversations like that, but this one felt very heavy, like much heavier. I think it exposed some of his hurt. It exposed some of the sadness and even some betrayal that he felt, and it made him feel very vulnerable. He's also saying things that were very intimate. And we had this conversation. It was very beautiful, very dope. We both agreed that it was really special. And then the next day, we had that same conversation with Andy. And Andy started to chime in and speak into, kind of respond to what Josiah said. And I realized Andy and I, and the things that we shared had the same kind of moral direction, but we got there very differently.
That's great.
And I thought, as I heard him talking, I was literally in the back seat. Like, literally, we were driving in the car. Andy was driving. Josiah was sitting in the front. And I'm literally in the back seat, kind of like watching my son be parented by someone other than me. And I was tempted to feel like fear. Like, I'm being replaced. Which is threatened. Which is a ridiculous thought, I understand. But I have to name it. I have to name it, right? But as the conversation went on, I was like, oh, this is going to be so helpful to Josiah. This is going to be so helpful to Josiah because Andy's experience and his perspective, and although the conclusion was similar to mine, the route he took there is making Josiah fuller. You know what I mean? Like, it's almost like expanding him. Because now he's getting perspective on something really, really important and really, really intimate. We were talking about sexuality. Really, really important, really, really intimate. It was expanding his thoughts, and it was almost like expanding him as a person, because he got his dad's perspective, which I think he really admired and really was really thankful for. But then he got his godfather's perspective, this other friend, this other person. And then we spoke, and then Dell spoke to him, and then that began
Where was
to.
Dell?
Oh, well, this was another day. Another day.
This was another.
He popped out of nowhere. He was in the back seat, like a good neighbor. Dell's always there. No, so. But I realized how much expanding, and I think what I mean by that word expanding is they were becoming more full. They had a greater sense of what a person could feel and think when thinking about any one thing, in this case, sexuality, friendship, betrayal, that kind of stuff. And Josiah was holding all of it. And so it's almost like, you know how they say, as a public speaker, you are the sum total of the voices that you listen to. But you need to hear a variety of different voices in order to find your own. I almost felt like Josiah was now holding 3 different perspectives. And then a few days later, he got the same conversation with Jose, his uncle. So he got 4 different conversations, 4 different perspectives with the similar kind of conclusion, similar kind of conclusions from 4 different people, but 4 different men that he loves and admires and are kind of like mentors and sages in his life. And now he's holding all of that, and he gets to look at that and say, let me form my thoughts now. And I feel like that will make him an incredibly agile, emotionally agile person to deal with people that go through deal with friends that go through different things and experiences, but things that he's gone through, but has a wide spectrum of perspective about it because of the people or the village that spoke into him. But I also think it will make him an incredibly active listener, which Josiah already has is already proving to be a very like, yo, I'm listening to what you're saying. You know, I can spit back to you the things that you're saying, but not to spit it back, but I can also make you feel like I'm here, you know, by his body language, but also by his responses. And I think that because he's being listened to and because he's being spoken to from a wide variety of perspective, I think that will shape him to be a good listener in return and to be a good responder. It's probably the equivalent of like living many lives. You kind of like you live many lives. That sounds a little extreme, but what I'm trying to say is
through
like
others' experiences.
Huh?
Through others' experiences.
Through others' experiences. Like,
I see what you're saying.
it's kind of like, yo, you don't have to live through hard times if you don't have to. But it doesn't mean you can't know what different kinds of hard times are through the people that you allow to speak into your life. And I think that's, you know, a few of the benefits of having a deeply rooted, trustworthy village that speak into the lives of your children. And I am curious ultimately to see, you know, what Josiah and Hayden will be like when they transition to their next phase of life, where we are not as involved in, because they're a little more independent, Josiah being the one closest to that. They become more emotionally agile, they become a much more active listener, and their lives just feel fuller because the instruments of shaping isn't just coming from one set of hands. You know, it's coming from a diversity of hands that are shaping, trusted hands, hands that share in value despite the fact that they express those values very differently.
Invite people in.
Invite people in. As we kind of round out this conversation, I'm curious to know how maybe this parenting approach, how is it like not challenged you, because you know, or maybe challenged you but shaped you? How is it like shaped you, changed you, made you think differently about your own villages? Like, because I guess we started off this conversation, I think you did, like saying the village concept is not just important for raising children, but it's like for the raising of yourself as you continue to grow as a person, as a human. How has that village concept been impactful for you?
I think that my present is, vastly different from my past, like my upbringing, right? Like I definitely don't feel like I had, that type of village. And so, while I can like cheer this on from the stands, in a sense, to a certain extent, like for our kids, right? I'm on the stands of like, yes, you get that investment from a diversity of like trusted, amazing people. Like,
don't bring it over here.
No, not at all. it's more so like remembering that I am just as worthy to have that as well.
Oh, yeah. Oh, so it's a matter like of dignity and worth for you.
Yeah, like
Yeah, that's interesting.
because I see, and even everything that you just said right now is just so beautiful, and like talking about that fullness and talking about what all of these people were able to like just contribute and invest, just like those small yet really big moments are helping Josiah to become himself, right? Just like the early versions of himself that will reap such amazing benefits as he gets older, right? So again, like I'm just like, this is so important. I have to remember that this is just as valuable
That's
for me
really
too.
good, babe.
So yes, it takes a village to raise a child, but that child grows up. So is the village still there? And so, yeah, like I have to remember that it's just different. For the child, you know, the community or the parents are working for that village. As an adult, no one's necessarily like saying, "Come, village, look at this, you know, grown woman," right? So
That's really good.
so I have to remember that I still am worthy of having that village for myself.
That's really well said. And also kind of like paradigm shifting for me, if I'm honest, because you are connecting this concept of like needing the village or community or the body, I mean, any sorts of metaphors you want to use, you're connecting it to dignity and worth. And I feel like that's really powerful. The other thing that you're doing is that you're helping me to see that this village, this body, this community, it's probably it's most helpful that we see that as something needed for all of life, but particularly at the thresholds of different seasons of our lives.
Mm-hmm.
As we're transitioning into new seasons, or we're kind of shedding the skin of an old version of ourselves and stepping into a new version of ourselves, or we're stepping into a new season of life. I mean, we've jokingly talked about this in previous episodes about stepping into midlife or early midlife. Like we're now having to think about Anna and Rich as their midlife versions, and what usually happens at thresholds or at seasons of change is that you're contemplating yourself. You're contemplating how will your values now be expressed in this new season. How will your values now be expressed as you change? You're becoming a new version of yourself in large part because you're stepping into a new season of your life. Excuse me. And community is helpful as you ask those questions and do reflecting, in the same way that we just said it has been helpful for Josiah as he transitions into later teenage years. Like, and then the last thing that I think that you're helping me to see is that maybe we need to see ourselves as adults as always growing like a child does. We are more easily encouraging of a village as it relates to the raising of a child because a child it's more visible and it's easily to notice and observe that a child is dependent. It needs help.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we don't do that enough as adults, if at all, because I think we believe that the older we get, the more independent we should be.
Yeah.
And from a practical lens, there's obviously a lot of truth to that. I don't need you to make me. But this doesn't even factor in the conversation of the community with disabilities that may need help, even as adults. What I'm trying to say, what you're saying here is so beautiful and so paradigm shifting, because you're telling me maybe we need to embrace the fact that we are less capable than we think, and that we should be more interdependent with one another than we live currently. And that village, that body, that community is meant to help us along the way as we discover more of ourselves, as we cross different thresholds of different seasons of life. And so that in some ways, I wonder if this is even what Jesus meant when he talks about this in Luke, where he says that the kingdom of God belongs to these children, or to such as these. Almost saying, like, there's something about the mentality and the mindset of a child that is willing to say, I need you.
Mm-hmm.
That adults don't quite understand. And that willingness, that acceptance, that embrace, that welcome of saying, I need you, community. I need you, God, so that I can continue to grow and walk along in this journey of life, especially as I'm crossing different thresholds, whether that be, going into my 30s, going into my 40s, going into my 60s, or going into marriage, or coming out of marriage, or big life transitions and thresholds. How could we ever survive them without a village?
Yeah.
A trustworthy village that desires our good and will help us to reflect about the seasons of life that we're in. How could we ever become ourselves without the village? That's really, really well said, babe. Thank you. I feel like that was really helpful for me.
Yeah. That's great.
Cool. Love you.
Love you.
It's good. Yo, thank y'all so much for watching. We really hope you enjoyed that. Conversations like these are meant to inspire conversations of your own with the people that you love. So, look, until the next time that you're here with us, be sure to stay curious about your own journey. You'll be very surprised to see who's been in there the whole time. Peace.